Good evening and welcome. Oh, Jeremy. Okay, there we go. Beginner here leading this meeting, so thank you for your grace. Good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting. It's Monday, June 15th. We are called to order at 7:02 p.m. Will you please stand me and join me in an invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance that's led by Councilwoman Padova.
As we gather this evening, I want to recognize the opportunities for connection in our community this weekend. Whether you're grabbing ice cream in Rathburn Woods, celebrating Juneteenth and Father's Day at the Creekside Blues and Jazz Festival, or simply enjoying the summer solstice, these all present an opportunity to meet a new neighbor and strengthen our community. The summer solstice on Sunday will be the longest day of the year, giving us more time to be outside and enjoy our many parks and trails. May we all enter this new season with kind hearts and curiosity. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Padova. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bowers.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
McGregor.
Here.
Padova.
Here.
Renner.
Here.
Schnetzer. Here. Weaver is absent.
Great, thank you. Are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to item C, presentations, and we have Senior Director Weibensinger for a Community Grants update.
All right, thank you. What I wanted to do is just catch you up on where we are with the community grant program for 2026. Similar to what we did last year around June is when we try to come back to do just the update and recap of where we landed. So I was here in March, and we've been able to hit every target so far. So applications went live on March 16th. We did send out the notice of funding opportunities, again, to all known nonprofits that we have. So we do try to track a database of anybody that we know is a registered nonprofit or those that have already applied or shown interest in the program throughout the last 4 years. So we do have quite a list growing. And then we do our social media posts, newsletter. I know the mayor has mentioned in mayor's comments as well. We advertise the program. For the first time this year is when we did that additional information session, kind of like a coaching, so nonprofits could come in and hear directly from the Department of Administrative Services on the application process. We did have 3 nonprofits that did attend, about 7 attendees, to be able to help answer some of their questions as they built their applications. And then April 6th, we did send out a final reminder, again, trying to drum up support for the program and applications. And then on April 13th is when everything was due. We did have our largest amount of applications received to date on the program. We have 24 applications from 21 separate entities. We don't restrict. People are allowed to apply for more than one program, but we do view them as separate applications as well. Total funding request, again, we do have that $10,000 maximum. We still did receive over $207,000 in requests for this year's program. Reminder that the Grant Review Committee is made up of 5 individuals, 4 residents, 2 appointed by council, 2 appointed by the mayor, and then 1 city staff member that is not a member of the administrative service team, as we are the facilitators for the program. So again, thanks to Travis Polk, Nancy Gerwin, Laura Rapaski, Melanie Hill, and Director Godke for their support on that. So of the 24 applications, you'll see attached to the agenda tonight is the overview chart that I provide every year to you, so you can kind of see who requested, what did they request for, what was their amount, and what was the amount funded. 17 were partially or fully funded. Again, all $100,000 this year was allocated for award. Last year, we were around $81,000. This was a very, very challenging year for the committee to kind of dig through. We had a lot of great applications. 7 applications were not funded for various reasons. Again, a lot of it is the competition for the dollars as well. 13 applications did receive partial awards. 4 applications were provided what we would consider full funding. But of those 4, only 2 requested the full $10,000 cap. The post-award process, we did do May 20th. We did a meeting here in council chambers where all the nonprofits that received the award did come on site here to get a walkthrough of the grant agreement, a reminder of all the requirements of the program, and we were here to answer any questions prior to them beginning the process. We do have all of the grant agreements are signed and in place. We do have some that are already starting their programming for this year. We do try to get it in the awards by the end of the second quarter, just because we do have summer programming that is impactful. So this is really a first half of the year process is what we try to get it done, so we're ready to go. We do have our first benchmark or check-in on July 31st for everyone. This is non-negotiable. This is a reminder to them to make sure they stay on track, and a reminder to us of where they are in the process. So if we feel we need to step in and provide additional support or assistance, we have that ability. Or if they're not going to hit any of the benchmarks, we can have those conversations as well. They do have another benchmark check-in October 31st as well. So this helps us. And we actually hear good things from them because it helps them stay on point as well. Because a lot of our nonprofits are, again, volunteers that do have other things going on in their lives as well. So they actually do appreciate us providing these check-ins for them. Final reports, again, are due December 31st. We could allow an extension if there's some outstanding situations as to why the program wasn't accomplished. But the goal is to have everything tied up and done by December 31st of every calendar year. And a reminder, it is a reimbursement basis for these awards as well. And that's kind of a quick overview. You do have the matrix of the overview in front of you. But if you have any questions, I'm here to take them for you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much for giving us an update on this. I just had a question. I saw that there were a few where they had applied like separate applications for different projects, and it didn't look like anybody got more than $10,000, even if that on those ones. But if somebody did have, is each organization capped at $10,000?
It's not an organization cap, it would be a project or a program cap. So
Okay.
if the committee did feel there were 2 strong programs, they could award it that option.
Okay,
They
I thought
do
there was a
take-
cap, I just wasn't sure
Yeah,
what
yeah.
if it was a project or the
Yeah,
organization.
not by organization.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have a quick follow-up, and then we'll pass it over. The review committee, do they also determine the amounts, or are they just voting on like yes award, no award? Or are they also deliberating on the amounts to the?
They do all of the above.
They do all of
Yes,
it,
so they
okay.
reviewed all 24 applications, and then they go back to ensure that they're meeting the criteria. 1A, 1B for mental health services, food, clothing, and security. And then they strategize depending on what is in the programs or projects as well. Most of the applications can be scaled depending on the funding size as well.
Okay.
Some of them could be contingent upon additional funding from outside sources. So all of that is kind of taken into effect when they come up with a general consensus of the 5 individuals.
Thank you. Councilwoman Bowers?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Director Weibensinger. We really appreciate you providing this information and for your continued work towards this grant program. 2 questions, at least off the bat. If additional funds had been allocated, would some of these awards have been recommended for being fully funded?
It's kind of hard to say because a lot of times the parameters they put in effect because they know what the budget is as well. They're not looking to award more than what they see is fit. If you look at like last year as an example, 60% of the committee this year was on last year's committee, and their approach, again, even though the budget was $100,000, they did trim it to $81,000 just because of what was in there. So there could be. It just kind of depends on where they would have landed.
So I guess if I'm understanding correctly, so for example, was the award then, the dollar amount award then based on more supported receipts that were received or more supported budget predictions or projections from the organizations? Like, for example, if I'm looking at one of the applications on page 2, $10,000 was requested for mental health support programming for veterans, and only about $2,100 was awarded. Was that $2,100 based on the $100,000 budget that was set overall for the community grant program, or was that based on projected budget or specific supported numbers from the organization?
In that particular case, it was what was within the packet that the application that the
Okay.
committee was comfortable funding.
Okay, all right, thank you. And the other question I had is that is there a requirement that the organizations open their program to all qualifying residents, or can the organization restrict based on membership within that organization?
So we do have them disclose if they are membership-based. The parameters of the program, again, are 51% of the Gahanna community have to be part of that.
So even though you're collecting information, whether it's open to just members of an organization, that's not a criteria for consideration, or is it?
I think it would weigh into the committee's decision as they're looking at the allocation of the awards. It would depend on the situation, I would think, of what does the membership look like? Is it, the American Legion, VFW, who have applied in the past versus another type of organization?
Okay, all right. I think those are the only questions I have for you today. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you again. We appreciate the update and look forward to hearing what great work these organizations can do in the community. All right, moving on to hearing of the visitors. Mr. Clerk, do you have any speaker slips?
None this evening.
Awesome. Moving on to section E, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the items listed under the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Renner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bowers. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Renner,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
McGregor,
Yes.
Padova,
Yes.
Schnetzer.
Yes.
All right, the consent agenda is adopted as published. We move on to ordinance for introduction and first reading. Mr. Clerk, would you please read ordinance 0020-2026 into the record?
Ordinance 0020-2026, an ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriations, state capital grant fund, and capital improvement fund for Academy Park and Friendship Park projects.
Great, thank you very much. Moving on, correspondence and actions. Mr. Clerk, anything for you to report this evening?
Nothing formally tonight, but I do want to recognize our guest this evening, Karis Lance. She is our summer intern through the MORPC program. She'll be with council office through August 6th. You'll be able to hear a presentation of her experience. We're aiming for that first week in August. We've got a lot of really exciting things planned for her this summer, and looking forward to having her showcase that during the August meeting. But stop by, say hello. She's very much interested in public policy and pursuing a possible law degree after her senior year, or a gap year, we'll see, right? But please stop by the office, say hello. Definitely welcome setting up any time for you to meet and share your experiences as a legislator. So thank you.
Great, thank you and welcome. We're glad to have you this summer. All right, council colleagues, any correspondent action items? All right, now we move on to representatives. First up, we have Community Improvement Corporation. Mr. Renner, Ms. Padova?
So our May meeting was held on May 20th. We discussed the strategic plan that we are working on and will be bringing to council here I believe, here in the next couple months. We approved the minutes and financials. We were updated on switching our emails from Gmail to Outlook. Got an update on Creekside. Everything is progressing on schedule. Discussed the Anfield House sidewalks and then went into executive session. We went out of executive, or I'm sorry, we went into executive session at 9:06, came out at 9:31. Discussed that our meetings needed to be planned for 90 minutes rather than 60, and adjourned at 9:31. Our next meeting will be tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Great, thank you. Mr. Weaver is absent, but his MORPC report is attached to the agenda, so I encourage everyone to take a look or review the report. There is information there on legislation pending at the State House, and then also some key funding opportunities, upcoming regional events as well. So we thank Mr. Weaver for that report. We send it back to you, Councilwoman Padova, for CVB.
Yes, so this is my final notice for anyone who has not yet heard that Creekside Blues and Jazz Festival is this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can buy your tickets at creeksidebluesandjazz.com. Also new this year is the Juneteenth celebration on Friday that is taking over the community stage. So come out and see your neighbors and listen to some music and have a good time. Weather is looking really good as of yesterday. Hopefully, I'm gonna knock on all of the wood here. So I'll shut up there.
Yes, yeah, let's not jinx the weather, but thank you. For school board report tonight, just a quick reminder of upcoming meetings. There are 2 this week. We have Finance and Facilities, which is tomorrow evening, and then the regular board meeting this Thursday. Again, both are 6:30 at Clark Hall. All right, official reports. Over to Mayor Jadwin.
Thank you very much. I will be brief. I'll just also add in Councilman Weaver's absence for MORPC. This morning, they celebrated their first groundbreaking on the very first Link Us project to be funded. It's a project at Grove City to assist, I think it's $2.2 million. They wrote a check and handed it to Grove City this morning to build the Hoover Road pedestrian bridge over 71. So again, that is the very first Link Us project to be funded. You might remember that initiative on the ballot a couple of years ago. So MORPC was very heavily involved in helping to create a funding mechanism in partnership with COTW to get that project off the ground, the whole program off the ground, I should say. And just as a reminder, City of Gahanna is in line for a Link Us project. I believe that has been bumped back by the Link Us team to 2029, correct? Right. It was 2028. They moved it to 2029. I should know that. I'm on the TSI Leadership Committee. Just verifying. Thanks, Director. So we'll be getting funding to help support our Big Walnut Trail when the time comes on that. And then this Wednesday, just a couple days from now, they'll be hosting the Mobility Exchange Conference. It's been sold out. So it's a full day of discussion on mobility in the region, thoroughfare planning, et cetera. I will be presenting, Kevin will be, Director Schultz will be down there with me, along with Hussein Nariji, our Director of Engineering, who will be joining us for that too. So more to come afterward. Just want to give a shout out to our public service team. You might have seen there was a water line break yesterday along the Taylor Station Road corridor. Received an email from Matt Jones about 2:30, just alerting that the water, they had to do some water line repairs, and by approximately 5:30, or I'm sorry, 7:30, it was 5 hours, he responded that everything had been fixed. So within 5 hours, our team came in on a Sunday, diagnosed the problem, and got it fixed to make sure that our residents had service. I guarantee you, you will not see that type of service in other communities. We really have an exceptional team that is responsive and timely, and they know what they're doing. So we really appreciate their efforts. Just something coming up, since we will not be together again, our July 4th celebration. We have July fireworks on July 3rd at the Municipal Golf Course. We will again be offering the VIP option Tickets will be available for that for the public next week. That includes a parking pass, the all-valuable parking pass, dinner. There's a cash bar in the clubhouse, but then of course air-conditioned and restrooms and prime viewing area. So we're excited for that. Our Parks and Rec team has a few tricks up their sleeve for that evening, and then of course we'll have the 4th of July parade the next day, which is presented by the Gahanna Lions Parade, which always both two very beloved events here in the community that really bring everyone together. So look forward to seeing everybody there. Councilwoman Padova mentioned Creekside Blues and Jazz Festival. Councilman Jones, Member Jones, it was wonderful to be on Channel 6 with you this morning talking about Juneteenth and the festival. Remind our residents and for visitors, parking, there's free shuttle. AEP Ohio, we're on Morrison, makes it nice and easy to get there. Don't try to insist on finding a parking space in the downtown area neighborhoods. Parking is very limited there. The shuttle is air conditioned. It provides great service. Please utilize that. Tickets are still available for the festival as well. And then just finally, on a personal note, I want to wish our oldest daughter, Sarah, a very happy birthday today, but also would like to just share the announcement. Our hearts are very full that we have a new family member. Our other daughter, Emily, and her husband gave birth to our first grandchild. And I can't, this meeting can't be over fast enough so that we can get to go see her. But we're very thrilled to welcome little Audrey to the Jadwin Blaney family. So I don't usually get to say things like that, but just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, City Attorney Tamala Harrison.
Thank you. As I had previously announced, the tobacco preemption litigation was set for oral argument last week. That is live streamed and recorded, and so anyone can check that out on the Ohio Supreme Court website for the oral arguments there. So at this point, everything is fully briefed, fully argued, and we are now just awaiting a decision. And so I will apprise council of that as soon as we have one. And then lastly, I would like to introduce my very own summer intern. Her name is Shreya. Shreya, if you want to wave or stand up and say hi. She's in the back here today. She's joining me for the summer from University of Texas, Houston, and will be with me through the end of July, both helping me here at the city as well as in my private practice. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Glad to have you this summer as well. All right, moving on to council comment. Mr. Renner.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mrs. McGregor?
Nothing tonight.
All right, Mr. Snetzer?
Nothing to add, thank you.
All right, Ms. Padova?
I'll continue with the same.
All right, Mrs. Bowers?
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Just a few things. So I also want to thank you, Mayor Jadwin, for highlighting the incredibly responsive staff for the water line issues that we were having yesterday. I wanted to just take a minute also in that vein to highlight the Gahanna Direct portal. I had a neighbor that reached out to me, told me that her water pressure was low, and I noticed that mine was too. I told her about the Gahanna Direct portal and that I would submit a request, but shared the link with her as well. And she was really excited to hear about what a great tool that is. I take advantage of it regularly as I'm out and around and see street signs tipped over or pylons out of place or weak water pressure. And so I just wanted to make sure that residents knew and could take advantage of the Gahanna Direct portal because it is a very responsive way to alert staff, but also to make sure that we understand kind of what the progression is on those service tickets too. So just a really great asset that I think Senior Director Schultz is in the audience tonight and had a strong hand in integrating that. So thank you very much for that work. I also wanted to take a moment and thank Gahanna Division of Police and other city staff that's been involved with the communication around e-bikes and e-scooters. I know that is a very hot topic in the community right now. We are hearing quite a bit from residents, and I know all of us are alert to this issue and are considering legislative options, operational options, and so that those are conversations that are being had. But thank you so much to staff for all the time and effort that you've been putting in on educating the community and being responsive to that. I also wanted to take a minute to recognize that June is National Gun Violence Prevention Month. I have wanted to take a moment to pause to remember victims of gun violence and reflect on what we can do to further prevent loss of life due to violence committed with firearms. We've had a rash again, and the summer months are always a little bit higher, and so I know that we've seen a number of stories in the news about tragedies, especially involving domestic violence, that have facilitated even greater harm through the use of firearms. Every Town for Gun Safety ranks Ohio as a state with weak systems in place to prevent deaths from gun violence. And as you've heard me talk about before, very often passionately, I think that we need to do better for children, families, and our first responders. At the state level, I believe that we need laws that expand and allow emergency protection, just like we do for mental crisis, stalking, and sexual assault. And at a local level, we need to continue to offer education and resources for safe storage, gun locks, and accessible, proactive first responders. In 2024, April 2024, we adopted a joint resolution and proclamation that highlighted and commended the Gahanna Division of Police for their efforts and their collaboration with the Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools to prevent, and Mifflin Township to prevent unintentional discharge and youth access to guns. So this evening, I would just call on my neighbors who feel the same way that I do to call state elected officials to expand emergency protective orders to prevent dangerous people from easy access to firearms. And with that, I'll just conclude by saying congratulations, Mayor Jadwin, and happy Juneteenth and Blues and Jazz Fest weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing attention to highlighting that month, this month, June. Thank you. I do not have any additional comments, so we have no further business for the regular meeting. So we'll adjourn and shift to Committee of the Whole officially at 7:29. And for me to flip my notes. All right, we are starting with Parks and Rec. Director Farrell, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I have 3 items for you this evening. The first item is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Playcore doing business as Game Time. And this is for the replacement of the Friendship Park Playground. This playground specifically will be the 5th playground throughout the entire system that has been replaced since 2021. This is consistent with the outcomes that are committed within the Parks Master Plan and also referenced within the Capital Improvement Plan. Zach Guthrie, which is in the audience this evening, he is the project manager for this project and has led an extensive engagement process throughout the entire project. As you know, Friendship Park is one of our most visited parks, not only for just unscheduled visits, but it is a host for one of our largest summer camps, and we also host special events there. So the engagement for this project was necessary. And also allowed us to gain some feedback through survey. We held focus groups with the Gahanna Jefferson educators. We also hosted interviews with individuals who are experiencing inclusive and accessible play. With that feedback, we were able to gain a design that's truly reflective of intentional play for individuals of all needs and interest. Also throughout the efforts of Zach Guthrie, as well as Sean Bach, the management analyst, the project was selected to receive an assistance through the Ohio Parks and Recreation State Initiative Program. And what this is, it's a partnership with Game Time, and it allows funding for some of our largest features within the playground to be heavily reduced at cost. The project also received funding through the Gahanna Kiwanis Club, as well as the Parks and Recreation Foundation, which is an action item that will follow this request. The project will be utilizing a cooperative purchase agreement through Omnia for the purchase and installation of the playground. With this, the administration is respectfully requesting a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with Playcore. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Are there questions? Yeah, Mrs. Padova.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sending over the renderings this afternoon. It was a I was at Friendship Park for a birthday party over the weekend, and it was a hot topic of what did they ever decide? We did the survey, and so there are a lot of people excited about this. I just had a question because on the renderings, it looks like the fence doesn't go, it doesn't go all the way around the playground, correct?
The fence does. The exhibits are deceiving because of, it just allows you to see the imagery of the playground.
Okay.
The fencing does go around the full perimeter, and that is intentional. Again, through the feedback that we received through focus groups, regardless of how old your child is or age or ability, there is opportunity for your children to elope. So this way, it allows some containment and allows parents, caregivers to enjoy their time a little more carefree,
Yes.
Obviously still in care of their child, but the fencing allows significant or a decline in any type of access points.
Okay, cool. So that answers my question because on the renderings, it looked like there was a weird gate in there that didn't really make sense and it stopped. And so that answers my question. And totally understand having the gate all the way around. I know the Linden Woods Inclusive Playground has been a big hit with all of the different groups that I've been talking to. And one of the biggest reasons is because of the gate, because especially if people have, a 2 and a 4-year-old, or they don't have to worry so much about one of them getting away when they're turn their back. So looking at the renderings and the points that you just made, I can tell you guys have put a lot of thought in taking a lot of feedback in this. So I think it will be great and well used, and everybody will enjoy it. So thank you so much.
I think it's noteworthy. Linden Woods coordinated with Jeremiah's Corner, which is actually, we also coordinated through the effort to understand truly what makes an inclusive playground. We want it to be more than compliant. We want it to truly be used as an inclusive playground.
Yes. Thank you. Very excited about this.
Other questions? I had a couple on the inclusive playground, and maybe this is a later presentation, but would love to know if you can know off the top of your head just some of those highlights, like what makes this like top of the line for inclusion.
Sure. And obviously, I always welcome Zach if you have extra feedback for this. But the ramps are wider, so you can allow a caregiver along with an individual to traverse the playground simultaneously. The play surface is mostly poured in place, so that allows whether you have wheels or just need more mobility access, that surfacing. Actually, the colors are also intentionally planned for individuals who may not be able to see distinct differentiating colors. So those are also intentional in regards to the design. The features, there are some ground play. So if you don't want to elevate into a higher elevation, there's surface level or ground play to allow you to play. So there's just a lot of very different things that they're purposeful decisions to help incorporate different needs.
Yeah, I love that, and I appreciate a shaded play area, so thank you. My other question was just how old is the current playground? Like when was the last time it was
It was
replaced?
installed in 2007.
Okay.
So we are at the end of its useful life.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Other questions? All right, so this item would be, we can have that on consent on July 6th. And if you want to move to your second item.
Thank you, appreciate it. Excuse me. The second is the Parks and Recreation Foundation has pledged $25,000 for the replacement of the Friendship Park Playground. Upon the receipt of these funds, it will be deposited into the Capital Improvement Fund and in return to the unencumbered, unappropriated balance. So the administration respectfully requests an ordinance authorizing a supplemental appropriation of $25,000 from the CIP fund to the Friendship Park Playground Fund. We are requesting a waiver so that the authorization of the contract as well as the supplemental can move simultaneously.
Any questions? All right, this one with the waiver requested, we would have this on regular meeting for July 6th. All right, next item.
Thank you. Last item. This evening, also requesting a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with Mid-States Recreation, and this is for the replacement of a playground at Ashburnham Park. Zach Guthrie is also the project manager for this project. He wears many hats and does them all very well. Ashburnham is a neighborhood playground. So the outreach efforts were really focused on the individuals who are surrounding that area to understand the feedback of who will most likely utilize the play features. So with that feedback, along with leveraging the nature play area, nature path that is adjacent to the playground, that's what truly helped to inspire the design of that playground. Also noteworthy is that if you visit there today, the elements are pretty simple. There is not a lot of interest to gain your time and effort. So the new design does have many different features to help keep you interested and also helps encourage imaginative play. So with that, the administration respectfully request a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Mid-States Recreation for the installation and purchase of the Ashburnham Playground.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Padova.
I believe, I want to make sure that I didn't get this mixed up, because I believe you said that the Friendship Park, your tentative installation and construction, I guess, is this fall. Would it be the same for this one? Or
We're
is
hoping
this
for the
one different?
same, and again, noteworthy, well, one with Friendship, we of course will wait until after the summer season so that we're not interrupting our summer camp operation. We are also at the excuse me, we'll call it the Mercy, it's a strong word, for the actual equipment to be delivered. It's an anticipated 8 to 12 weeks, but again, it's an anticipated number. So the actual delivery of the equipment and then weather is a factor. It has to be 50 degrees and rising in order to pour a playground surface. So Friendship Park, that is an impact. Transversely, the Ashburnham, it is an engineered wood fiber surface. So we have a little bit more flexibility with weather conditions to get that playground installed. It's a really long way of saying we're hoping that both are installed this fall, but dependent on delivery and weather conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, we'll have this one then on the consent agenda on July 6th as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Farrell. Moving on to Economic Development, Director Godke. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. I am going to there we go. Great. I could ask. Pass. Okay. One day I'll get the transition right. Thanks for your patience on all of this. So tonight on the agenda, you have a request for a CRA tax abatement with Pioneer Development. Before we go any farther, I'll say that we've had several discussions given the law change regarding confidentiality of tax abatement applications. The company has signed a waiver, so everything we're talking about tonight is obviously public and can be discussed and disclosed publicly. So I wanted to give a little bit of a framework over some discussions that we've had about what a property tax abatement is and maybe what it is not. So very simply, it's a discount on future taxes. But it's also, in a sense, an investment into each other, right? The city is or the company is investing into the city, and through via the abatement, the city is investing into the company. So they're not just ways for companies to meet financial needs, they are also opportunity for the city to work toward their strategic goals. So basically, they're a negotiated agreement, a contract, a business deal. And each side negotiates to get what it wants and should always be mindful of limiting its risk of failure. While you cannot eliminate risk, you can reduce it, and I'll show you in a few minutes how that happens, basically using different measurements and verifications to ascertain to the best extent possible that this is the best deal possible for the city. So, quick agenda. We'll introduce the project. We have a company representative here as well. We'll introduce him. We'll talk about the terms of the business deal, talk about the benefits to the city, and how we have minimized that risk. So, project introduction. The applicant is a joint venture. It's actually two companies that are forming a joint venture, Pioneer Development and Francis Family Investments, which is the family that owns Suburban Steel. So it's a local company that's joining with a developer, a local regional developer that has some demonstrated success over their 4 projects, I think 5 now, over 400,000 square feet that they've brought online since they were formed in 2021. And they only have projects in the Columbus region. So when we talk about a local company, it truly is from a project standpoint and an ownership standpoint. Project details, you can see down in the middle is with the red arrow. It's almost 3.9 acres, almost 4 acres, just to the southwest of Suburban Steel, kind of in a overlooked part of the city. Probably the railroad tracks are that kind of diagonal line down in the southeast corner there, and then Eastgate Parkway coming down from the north and south, and then Deffenbaugh Court. Property access will be off of Deffenbaugh Court, which kind of goes east and west there. So the proposal is for a 35,000 square foot that's dividable into 8,000 to 35,000 square foot spaces. You hear the term flex space or flex office or flex industrial. Thought I'd take a second to talk about what that is and what it's not. So it is basically a hybrid office workspace building that's highly customizable to the needs of the tenant. So it combines the benefits of both uses. You have this office space up front that could be anywhere from 10 to 20, 25% of the total space that tenant occupies, with some workspace in the back. Each space will have a dock and a drive-in door so that it can be accessed from the rear for those sort of shipping transit needs. So the buildings are attractive from the front to the customers because of the office component to it, while still being utilitarian enough in the back. They offer customization and scalability A company that would want to maybe expand into the space next door could do that very easily because of how the buildings are constructed. So when we think about planning for the future, having these kind of customizable buildings help us to do that, where we're not sort of limiting ourselves to this highly specialized use that would be very difficult to find a second user down the road. Target tenants would be a range of small-scale tenants like office headquarters, R&D, engineers, advanced/light manufacturing, or sort of like tech manufacturing, you hear it called, material suppliers, contractors, showrooms, startups, or new companies moving to the area who want to establish a foothold while they expand before making an expensive investment. All of Pioneer's previous tenants sort of fit this, or most of them sort of fit this model, so there's a demonstrated market. This type of building is not useful for large-scale distribution, heavy manufacturing, or storage because the site is too small, the building design doesn't allow it, and the site constraints sort of prevent that. So with this less than 4-acre property, there's not much else that could be done on this particular site. So I want to introduce the company. Here with us tonight is David Sells. He's a partner with Pioneer Development. He can introduce himself, his company, a little bit more about the project. We'll let him speak a few minutes, and I'll finish up, and then we can ask questions if you would like. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all. My name is Dave Sells, Pioneer Development. This project is great kind of representation of exactly what we do. We focus on this light industrial flex type asset. So if we think about industrial, it's a pretty broad category, right? A lot of the sort of industrial development that sort of boomed, particularly coming out of sort of the COVID period. Think 50,000 square foot and up, bulk distribution, e-commerce, logistics, heavy storage use. We kicked off our first project in the Columbus region in 2023, which was in Marysville, based on the thesis that, if you're a 5, 10, 20,000 square foot tenant, local businesses, regional company coming to establish local presence, a small startup who's needing to get into your kind of second intermediary space, that market was really underserved. There was no new development. The vacancy rate was under 3%. Interestingly enough, as we've completed now 6 buildings of this type over the last 3 years. I've worked with around 20 new businesses in the region over these last 3 years. Those buildings have filled very quickly. There's been some new development across the region, but the vacancy rate for this product type actually remains below 3%. So it just shows there's strong demand, and there continues to be a lack of supply of this product type. The land that we've developed in Marysville and Grove City, Plain City, just a few miles from this site, by the airport, in Columbus, up in Delaware, all of these were undeveloped. This is undeveloped land, a lot of overlooked land, kind of hard to solve for pieces of land, less than 10 acres, odd shapes, maybe some wetlands, things like that, right? So they've been, it's been vacant land for decades that's not been generating revenue through the city. This, building being more flexy, being, sort of less constrained and needing, large, truck court depths and semi-trailer parking, all of those things, sort of allows for, to unlock those sites. So what's been really, exciting to sort of see in partnership with, the other municipalities we've worked with, we've done, work with other, economic development groups, Jobs Ohio, to unlock these projects. What can be challenging to unlock is to see full circle, the businesses that they have attracted. And they tend to be these lighter uses, compared to sort of a building that is just racking and storage. You have office with higher, employee counts on average. So to see those companies that have come to now call, those various communities, home where they intend to establish and grow, or where they started and have been growing, and now they're allowed to continue to grow within those communities versus leaving. It's been really exciting to see that. This site here, perfect example, overlooked site, that really has not been developed. Pretty challenging from a size, dimension, kind of limited in terms of what it can accommodate. So see this both as, highest best use for the site, as well as, a product that has not been developed here in Gahanna, and of which continues to show, extremely strong demand. One thing that, often sort of comes out of conversations with talking about this sort of building type, this product type is, who are the users? When we're building speculatively, we don't know who they're going to be. What if we sort of, wait for those users to come along and sort of want to choose, Gahanna as home? And what we've seen prove out project after project is this really is a build it and they will come type product. And that's driven largely by the decision-making timeline for, the typical tenant who's occupying these spaces. That decision-making timeline is less than 6 months. We've worked with international companies establishing their first location in the States. We've worked with local companies expanding. We've worked with regional companies who are just coming in the Columbus region and wanting to do business here. And in all those cases, they're looking to get into space, within 6 months. So by building and having the building ready, that is how, Gahanna and we together can, attract and win those new companies that would be a good fit, for this location, for this community, and, certainly would be good job creators, for the community. So we think it's a great project. What brings us together, here to talk about tax abatement is that these sites are challenging to solve for, they're costly to solve for. And a key component to, unlocking these sites and creating the financial feasibility of these projects together, is through tax incentives. These, ultimately are dollars that are passed through, to the tenant in the form of, how can a tenant who's coming to the market afford to pay for this building? Taxes being, a all-in cost, right, of that cost to occupy. And so the cost to develop a small site to pay for, tap fees, utility fees, detention, lack of economies of scale to build these buildings is considerably, more expensive, right, and to a point that pushes the financial feasibility out of the realm of possibility, without incentives like this, right, that help us together get these projects off the ground to attract, these users that ultimately, we're trying to attract. So appreciate the time and consideration and, support for the project thus far. Any questions for me? Or
Yeah, any questions?
Yeah, I think maybe just one for Mr. Sells. So I understand, or actually, could you share with us a little bit more about your relationship to the projects that you've previously done in the region? Do you continue, or do you act as a landlord? Do you continue to hold those properties? What's your dynamic with the projects that you've already done?
Yeah, great question. So for the most part, our core business model is as owners to own, operate. We're also property manager, have property management division. So, the intention here is to own and operate, the building long term.
So not an intention to assign or transfer ownership interests to another entity?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Other questions?
I'm sorry, just
Yeah, sorry.
one more. I think you spoke a little bit sort of topically about the type of uses for this parcel. Could you tell us a little bit more about the type of tenants that would be attracted to this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So just on that one step back, so these projects we build as an open box. So they're designed for multiple tenants. So the infrastructure, the front entrance doors, the rear loading doors, the electrical conduit, all of that is designed up front to accommodate multiple tenants, right, with flexible configuration. So it's not just here's one tenant size. It's okay. You may have someone who comes along and needs 8,000 is too small and 15,000 is too big. Can you, and we need 11,000 square feet. So the intention of these buildings is to be as flexible as possible to accommodate those kind of odd sizes, if you will. So delivered as an open box and then finished out for specific tenant needs. So the most typical tenant profile would be someone who is a regional, just did a lease with a regional technology service provider. So they're a pretty large regional, company. They've actually been established in the Columbus market with service techs, kind of working from home. But they've grown to a point where they need a facility to house their office staff, right? So they're going to have a 2,500 square foot office, for example, in a 10,000 square foot facility. In that office, they're going to have admin, their location, their Columbus market location manager, sales, quotes, type staff, other sort of support, sales type staff. And then you have a warehouse where they'll have, shelving with the materials that they use to then take out on the job site, right? So now they're storing that material locally, and then they have all their local, team members who are going out to other local businesses in the area to, do their install type work, right? So a contractor would be a tip of that type, right? Or a service provider who's servicing local businesses, regional businesses, or, the media community would be a typical type of user. A small manufacturer, we have had the fortune of working with a Japanese company who's very established in Japan. They serve the auto industry. They're looking for their first U.S. location. Did a multi-state search. They ended up, they ended up in Ohio. Very similar profile. An 8,000 square foot total facility. 2,500 square feet of that is an office. So it's your full staff that you need: management, sales, internal support, admin. And then you have a warehouse where they had some precision cutting machining in that warehouse. So again, typically that kind of front of the house, either internal sort of staff that's supporting this local market with some form of, warehouse space for equipment, machining, or materials that are going, into their, out with, service type folks, for the day. That's a typical type of, user profile that you see in these facilities.
Could you talk to us a little bit more about the job creation total and the average wages and how you were able to identify that based on sort of a speculative tenant?
Yeah, going from experience, right, on what's so here, for example, I mean, a typical, let's say you go to like heavier distribution, right? It's not uncommon to have a 40,000 square foot facility with 3 jobs, right? 3 folks in there. Because of the nature of the tenants that we typically see, a heavy storage type logistics user like that, there's just not enough space. It doesn't make sense. It's not the loading, it's not the configuration. So the typical type of user that we see where they have a higher office percentage versus, let's say, that material storage where it's a 5% office or less, you have on average closer to 20% office, is from our personal experience, right, in this type of facility. So versus that, being into the, few tenths per 1,000 square foot developed, we tend to see on average closer to a half of a full-time employee per 1,000 square feet. That's from our experience. You'll have a tenant who's has 10% office, few employees in that space, but then next to them you'll have someone with 30% office, heavier staff, and so on an average basis, a reasonable, realistic, but also comparatively compared to other building type, average is around half an employee per 1,000 square feet. That filters out, right, a lot of those lighter, dense storage type users, because again, they're just not going to have the employees. Or that's going to filter out a recreational user, for example, right? Because if someone's coming in to put a gym in this facility, that's going to be maybe one employee, a few part-time employees, right? So, that's going to negate the ability to, put that type of tenant.
The prospective or projected wages at 55,000.
Comparable, you're right. So typically the blend of a, with a little a higher average wage base, and then, a company will typically have, warehouse hourly type, employees. So the blend of those, it's based on the blend of those typical wages that we've seen across comparable projects, as well as just broader outside of our projects, just, what's the wage data on a typical, from a job type and typical, and then adding, how many of each of those job types do you typically see in a building like this?
Is that, so the guaranteed total payroll is just under $10.5 million for the life of the abatement. And that's guaranteed by Deffenbaugh Flex LLC / Pioneer / the other entity that's escaping me right now, right? Is that understanding correct?
Right, so essentially for us to remain, as project owners, for us to remain in compliance, with the abatement, then that is the amount of payroll that needs to be generated, right? And that annual report, through the annual reporting requirement, that's validated. The way the agreement is structured is that in the event of a shortfall of payroll, then in order to, maintain the abatement and stay in compliance, then, we're to cover that shortfall.
Okay. And so the way that you have historically been able to sort of meet this, or the way you plan to meet this for this project, is that you're looking at tenants that are going to deliver that type of payroll. So that's one of your
Right.
considerations in leasing.
That's right.
Okay. And this question might be a combination to you, Mr. Bell, or to Director Gottke, but we've sort of, I think, high level touched on the but-for financial gap analysis. Are you able to tell us a little bit more about that? What is the gap? Could you explain why the incentive is necessary in order to move forward with this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of comes back to the commentary on cost of delivering these projects, right, and financial feasibility. And then combined with what are market lease rates, right? So, I mean, really the formula for how do we solve for feasibility for the project, ultimately it is what can the, typical tenant in the market, what can they pay for, right? And also what positions the building to be attractive. So really it's a function of what is the cost of the building, a modest, reasonable, sort of rate of return on that makes the investment, possible, feasible, attractive, and then at that level, how do we go out and attract the tenants, right? So a typical, from this, like on a typical market lease rate, that we're underwriting to here is around $12 to $12.50, with $1.50 to $2 in operating expenses being taxes, insurance, snow removal, landscaping, the necessary cost to maintain a property. That gets to an all-in rent that is market rate, that is feasible. It's well above historical averages, but in our experience, that can position a new building with lower operating expenses to be able to, attract a tenant who wants a more, they need a custom-built office. The space simply doesn't exist. More energy efficient, more modern amenities, like need that type of space, are willing to pay for that versus an older, potentially more cost-effective, solution. So it's really a function of that's where the market lease rate is. So if you put the full tax burden on a project with the cost basis, simply what it costs to build a building like this, then you would price the project well outside of, the market rate, particularly compared to neighboring communities, which are all, any other new development is abated. So without, the full abatement would be, let's call it $2.50 to $3 per square foot for a given tenant more, without the tax abatement in place. So right there, let's say you have a 10,000 square foot user. I mean, it would cost them $30,000 more dollars a year to be in this facility, to be in Gahanna, than to be, in Columbus or in New Albany or in Hilliard or any surrounding community. So how can we, we can't, as the building owner, it's not financially feasible to collect $30,000 less, on investment because of the cost basis. And then, from a tenant's perspective, they're not, they can't afford, and it's not attractive to pay $30,000 more than a comparable, nearby facility.
I think those are perhaps my only questions for Mr. Bell, but I have other questions between Director Gotke and City Attorney Tim Larson.
Any other questions for Mr. Sells? Yeah.
I think I just have one, but what made you choose Gahanna? How did Gahanna come across your radar?
The Columbus region is, economically for this type of product extremely strong, and the, new business growth is really strong. We've seen and been able to, execute projects in Columbus and other surrounding communities, and this type of development has not been developed in Gahanna. So we see it as there's a strong need where it's in pockets all around. There is, good activity, there's good growth, there's strong demand, but it doesn't exist in Gahanna, right? I mean, this sort of size. If you today are looking for an 8,000 square foot, building with a dock and a drive-in in Gahanna with, flexible office space, there's zero availability. So if you're a current, Gahanna tenant, how do you grow within Gahanna? I mean, if you are, there's someone we've been working with who is in, they've been operating in New Albany for 20 years. They live in Gahanna. They'd like to move their business here. Again, there's no space for them to do that, right? They can't do that. So, I mean, from a Gahanna standpoint, it's one, there's a lack of available inventory, so the demand is there. Strong, legacy base, of companies who are growing. It's an attractive, community from a population standpoint, from a location standpoint and access, right, to serve the Columbus region. A lot of business owners live, in and nearby Gahanna and would like to operate their businesses in Gahanna. So it's well positioned, lack of supply, and the demand in the very immediate nearby communities for this type of product has been really, really strong, and Gahanna would compete extremely well for those users had the building been available.
Thank you. And also, last thing is just thank you for having this conversation openly. I appreciate that.
Right, Ms. Bowers.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I had one more. I believe on the application, there was a question regarding pending litigation or litigation involving municipalities or development projects. Was anything disclosed as a result of that? And are you in any kind of active litigation with any other municipality?
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
All right, Mr. Gotke, I believe we have follow-up questions for you. Ms. Bowers, do you?
Yeah, a few. Yeah.
I could continue, and maybe that would answer some of your
Sure,
questions? If
yeah.
that's okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So some of this we've covered, and I'll try not to cover it again. So when we think about, okay, what are the terms of the business deal that we're talking about here, I thought it would be helpful if we kind of put it side by side. The company gets one thing, we get some other things. And so you can see that there. These are the investments that we're making into each other. But at its base, this is a very traditional CRA abatement deal. When you look at the structure of the agreement, it's kind of just how the form works. Really, there's not too many modifications or specializations made to this one. So you can see 75% abatement for 10 years. I'll tell you how we arrived at that in a minute. 2-year ramp-up period to reach that minimum payroll. And then Mr. Sells mentioned that the but for that gap financing will be passed on to the tenant to make the rent affordable and competitive for the region. And in return, you can see we get $4.9 million in new construction. You know, one thing to not forget is regardless of the tenant or the owner, that building is still built here, right? And that's still almost $5 million of investment that wouldn't have happened before. We talked about the 18 jobs and how that was arrived at. The minimum payroll requirement, which is guaranteed, the annual salary, a annual contribution to the CIC in pursuit of its economic development efforts, and then some assignability requirements that are kind of an innovation that we'll talk about in a minute as well. To get back to the salary question, how did we arrive at that? That was a lot of my doing in terms of like what that target base salary would be. So I want to be very conservative when I estimate these, in the sense of like, let's under promise and over deliver a little bit, right? So when you look at the typical jobs that would fill this building, I took kind of the lowest regional salaries for those. So it would be like production jobs, some of the office staff jobs, some of those lower paying things, so that like we know that we're getting this much at a minimum, and it's likely that we'll get more, but not less, right? That's kind of how I estimated that salary amount.
Wait.
Mm-hmm.
So go back. The annual contribution to CIC, I had not seen that before in our contract. So how did that arise?
Yeah, this is new. So in the past, we had I think the chamber was a recipient, like a mandated recipient of some things. So I want to, one, at a minimum, require payments to the CIC for its mission, which is closely aligned with my day job and your role here for economic development and bringing prosperity to the city. There are other opportunities to contribute. We don't want to leave out our friends that are kind of in tangentially related lines of work. But if you think about what organization other than the city does this most and does it the best, I think it's the CIC. So it was sort of prudent, I thought, to have a guaranteed minimum income stream for them. And I would expect to see that on any of these going forward as well, when the CIC needs to think about how can it develop some financial stability for itself in pursuit of its mission. This is one way to do that.
Okay. It's just so new. Why 1,000? Why not 5,000? Why not? What is this?
This is the business deal part of that, right? Because at the bottom line of this whole agreement is affordability, right? So we actually we kind of went back and forth on a few numbers and ended at 1,000. That it was mutually agreeable to both of us. It was originally higher than that.
If you're done, I did have one quick question also about this particular element, since we're on it as well. Would the funds pass through the city as, or would the funds go directly to the CIC? And I think that this is perhaps a question for the city attorney in terms of enforceability, and is it clear? I mean, I'm just curious, like enforcement and And transparency too, and I know that the CIC does publicly report its finances.
Yes, it's a separate check that's written to the CIC from the company as part of the reporting requirements that we would gather the same way we gather jobs and payroll numbers. There's also a verification that that payment was made to the CIC. I believe the agreement also stipulates clearly that non-payment is a material breach of the agreement. And so that would so that's part of Turk's calculations as well, and yours, and would be reported to you all via Turk's recommendations.
And if I could just add there, so, and Director Gotke can confirm this is not abnormal in this field to have the CIC contribution. We have not historically done that in Gahanna, but it is not an anomaly in the economic development space, and this is in neighboring communities in Franklin County do use this mechanism also.
Actually, thank you for that, Madam City Attorney, because I was going to ask Director Gotke to speak to how you arrived at putting this into the agreement, considering the feedback from our Gahanna,
Right.
as well as the research that was done in neighboring communities.
Yeah, all of that,
and I
yes.
get-
It is not uncommon regionally to have these kind of supports, community support payments.
And just to think out loud, the consequence is loss of the incentive, loss of the abatement. The
Right.
consequence is not pursuit of the $1,000 on behalf of the CIC. Okay.
Correct.
I'm just thinking this out loud.
It's
All
loss-
right.
It's loss of the abatement, material breach of contract.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
understood. Right.
That's right. Okay, so then when we think about benefits, we're getting close to wrapping up here. Is this a good deal for the city? So here is kind of how it all benefits us. It aligns with some our Gahanna and economic development strategy goals, like infill, maximizing our limited land, the value in our limited land that's left. We had talked previously about a new calculation that I think is worth continuing. That's value per acre, or you could almost think of it as return per acre. And there's the calculation that we had talked about previously. So you look at the annual output, so kind of everything fiscally that impacts the city via income tax withholdings, increased tax value, which can get realized through TIF payments, any kind of pilots, NCA fees, service charges, et cetera, divided by the parcel acreage would get us a value. So that would tell us how much an acre is worth in return for a project, and you compare that to existing projects. And so that creates this kind of matrix. I believe the average value per acre is just over $300,000 right now with the existing post-94 abatements. That's how I came up with that. So you divide that into quartiles, and then you get these kind of tiers with these bands. And so this project scores at a tier 3. You can see there. And so what I have done is talked about like a description of what a tier 3 project would be, some typical uses, and I wrote this before the application came in, and the last typical use is smaller flex industrial with an office component. So this sort of fits right into the vision for that tier of project. So that's sort of our target baseline. You know, if we're within that 200 to 350 per acre, that would be what we would consider an average-ish project. Of course, we want to shoot higher than that. But that's where that measurement comes from. And then to go back to our benefits, we had talked previously about net fiscal impact. So that's like what it generates fiscally every year. And again, I'm using the word fiscal, which is like money that comes into the city and not just general economic increases, divided by the costs. And so over the life of the abatement, this has a net positive of just over $366,000 to the city. We can look at things like jobs per square foot ratio around the region, so this falls in the average range there. Above average pay for those likely minimum jobs we talked about. Average pay for those jobs is about $48,000, so they've guaranteed $55,000 in salary, so it's above average there. It meets the market demand we talked about, less than 3% vacancy. 5% is kind of the industry standard. That's considered a healthy market. So we're under what's considered a healthy market for vacancy. It's efficient use of a small lot. It's kind of been overlooked, like we talked about. The use fits the area, the market need, and then you've got that local owner and an existing business. The other partners are existing business owners in the city, and we never want to forget that. Because these are businesses that have already made investments into the city, and that should be considered heavily when we look at these. Okay, so then wrapping up here, we've talked a lot about risk reduction, and so what can we do to set ourselves up to guarantee those benefits to the best that we can over the life of the abatement. So we've done a quantitative evaluation and a qualitative evaluation, and that's the sheet I passed out there. I thought this might be helpful for you. If you think so, I'll continue to do that. This is like a summary of the evaluation, and then kind of the values that are placed on that based on different factors that I'll talk to you. I thought it might be easier than trying to like scroll through it if you could just see it all in one spot, kind of how it scores out. So you can see on the quantitative side, we've ensured income tax collections. We've verified that the target abatement is just enough. And so I do that through information that's collected and discussions that I have with the applicant to make sure that that but-for is truly a but-for. It's in-demand product type, and we have ensured assignment approval by you all. Let me talk about that for a second. So there's essentially two types of assignments that can occur with these agreements. The first is a change of like a merger or some sort of internal company change of shares, ownership shares, right? Those are traditionally around the state and here been an administrative approval because it doesn't change the deal, right? And it doesn't really materially change the owner. Where I think you would want to have more of a say is in that assignment of a sale of the building. And so in that situation, then that materially changes the deal because you're dealing with a new owner and a new operator. So then that would come to you for your approval rather than administrative approval. There is kind of a third option where if you have a sale and the new company agrees to everything that was in the agreement previously, and they meet all of the same risk reduction verifications, then that could be administratively approved because what you're doing is essentially approving a thing that's already been approved, and it would be kind of a waste of everybody's time to go through that whole process to already review something that has previously been approved. And I'll talk about the verifications that we go through right now. So when we looked at the qualitative evaluation, there's three categories. Governance structure, so does the applicant demonstrate that they're legally accountable and responsive? And so there are things that we look at like articles of incorporation, filings with the Secretary of State, org charts, those sorts of things. And so this company rates, that's the highest level there, is effective in their governance structure to be legally accountable and responsive. The second thing I look at is completion viability. So do they have the ability to complete a project? So we would look at things like past performance. Does the management have the experience to deliver the project? Does the company history and background have demonstrated success? We look at recent and relevant project experience as well as completion at other sites around the region. And I'll drive to another town and look at that building to see that to kind of know what we'll expect here and that what has been stated in the application has been delivered to the community. And I call my peers in those other communities, and I did it with all of them on this one, and I'll continue to do that to verify project success. I will say that I had more than one community that I called about Pioneer say, do you want a support letter from us? We love these guys. That's pretty rare in this business. And then the last thing is what I'm calling regulatory compliance and financial wherewithal. So this is, has the company demonstrated regulatory compliance? So we asked earlier about pending litigation, right? We look at things like EPA violations, tax delinquency, prior defaults on municipal agreements, the debarment list if they're a particular contract, bankruptcies, and then we want to look at financial wherewithal. So does the company have the financial ability to complete the project? So you look at things like owner stake, right? Are the owners putting skin in the game themselves to the extent that the city is, right? We look at debt service coverage ratio. Is enough money flowing into the project that can actually pay for it in the long run? So these are all things that get done that you don't see that I do during the day. So I thought it would be helpful to deliver some of that to you so you could see it there. And then I kind of rated it based on kind of a 4-tier thing: high, average, at risk, and unacceptable. And so all of this pencils out or is verified through those mechanisms to be a highly likely project for success and completion, which means low risk to the city for default or not completion. And then lastly, on your form there is what we're calling community benefits. So these are almost like bonus points, right? Other things the company is doing that fit into things that we want to see here. So that would be things like above average payroll, if they're building in a priority development area. These are what this applicant meets, but there are others. Are they locally owned? Do they have a demonstrated but-for need? And then there are some other things that could apply: enhanced architectural design, sustainable building practices, enhanced employee benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll continue to look at sort of those bonus point things as well to help us understand the quality of the project. So I believe that is all I had. And suggested approval calendar, would be, of course, we're meeting tonight, first reading on July 6th, and then the second reading on July 20. So, questions?
Questions? Go ahead.
I want to make sure that I understood and heard you correctly, that if they sell the building, that would come back to council to approve if we are going to pass the abatement on to the new owners. Did I understand that?
So in the packet, you'll notice one of the exhibits was this form, right? So this is basically, this is what a buyer would have to meet in its entirety in order for it to just be assigned administratively. If it deviates from this, it comes to you for approval, because that, to me, is a new deal.
So if everything is the same, but they don't currently have an existing business in Gahanna, is that enough of a the
Some of this is the community, the bonus points category, I'm not considering those.
Okay. So as long as everything on here is the same, then it would be administratively approved. If anything differs, then it would come back
Yes.
to us.
Yes.
I guess typically it's just with the building forever, right? Is that pretty typical that it's passed on? Or not forever, but the term of the abatement?
This is one of those subjective things. There's no prescription within the revised code of how to handle it. Different communities handle it differently.
Okay.
The bright line seems to be if the deal changes, then it goes back to council. That's not true everywhere, but that's kind of how most communities handle it.
So we're incentivizing, which I don't particularly like using that word for this, but people to build in Gahanna and come here and have jobs. And part of it is the construction cost and the investment into the community. So then if somebody else comes and buys it, even if they meet all of these, then why, I know it's still like you're getting the jobs, but why would we still need to, they're not paying the money to build everything and having the same investment, right?
I mean, they're buying the building.
Yeah, so I guess maybe it's not the investment, it's they don't have as much of the risk once everything is built. I guess maybe that's where it differs a little bit.
Again, they're buying the building, right? So they're going to
Yeah.
have the same financial obligation. They're going to have the same bills to pay
Yeah.
that the initial recipient would.
Okay, I like that if it changes and it doesn't meet these same qualifications, that it would come back for us to decide whether or not this should change.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen, I don't know that we've had that in the other ones that have come before me. But, okay, thank you.
Yeah, some of the existing agreements they don't really talk about, we learned this week, they don't really speak to what happens in the event of a sale. So what we want to do with these things is like lay out the path and kind of set the expectation. Like we want to leave some breadcrumbs for future us to understand what past us we're doing, right?
All right, Ms. Bowers?
Yeah, I think we'll just continue on this thread before I ask some of the other questions that I had. I had some of the same questions and concerns I think that Councilwoman Padova raised. So kind of by this rationale, if we, let's say hypothetically, we sign off on or say that we really like the structure of the tiers that you've come up with, why not just delegate all authority then to the Economic Development Department and say, hey, look, as long as you make the assessment that it fits into this, go ahead and approve it without us?
I suppose you could do that. I think there are some things that fall squarely within the council's purview that you would want to try to maintain.
Yeah.
And that would be financial decisions with the city's money, of which an abatement is.
Yeah. I won't belabor it, but I would not be in support of including that third option as one that does not come before council. That if it is a sale to if it is an arm's length transaction, I think it needs to come back in front of council, not for performance or because we need to, wield authority or whatever it is, but mostly for transparency. It's not about Director Gotke. It's not about Mayor Jadwin, it's not about Councilwoman Bowers, it's about ensuring that the residents of Gahanna have an opportunity to hear the presentation from the owner, to understand the but-for case, to understand, I think, the considerations that are going into this. Because for us, I mean, those community benefits are valuable and do make a difference. I mean, last year, 4 of us voted no on an abatement for a project that generated more jobs at a similar pay. Now, it was asking for a higher incentive, longer term and higher abatement amount percentage. I think 12 years at 80%. So for me, I think it's critical that an arm's length transaction does not allow automatic transfer or administrative approval. So that's, I think, what I'll share on that point.
And we had talked about, I'm going to look at the city attorney, we had talked about this situation. There was also, I'm now remembering, we said, if it meets all of this stuff and it can be administratively approved with a report to council, you had suggested some sort of transparency mechanism, and I don't recall what it was off the top of my head. Am I remembering that wrong? I think there was, we need to tell council about it.
Correct, but I think I don't know that we baked that into the agreement as is written. I think that was a concept that we were talking about, some other level of transparency or accountability there if the transfers being made, and I don't know that we solidified language for that.
Right, that sounds right. Happy to include that as well. Over the recent law change, we were sort of all, gnashing our teeth about how this can't be a transparent process anymore. So that, that transparency is obviously important. I will add, though, that this particular thing, this clause in there, is not necessarily one of those business deal points. This is a thing this is a process on our part, right? So, like we had previously talked about, don't hold them accountable for a process that we're trying to create, right? So don't kill the whole thing because there's this one little part that you may not agree with when it's not material to the business deal, if that makes sense.
I think I had a couple other questions as well, if I can continue. Thank you. I think that just to piggyback on that point really quickly, I think that the reporting to council would be great for kind of an internal transfer, an LLC change, anything that just needs, even if it were just as part of the Turk report. I think that's adequate. Like a not arm's length transaction, a closely held transaction, I think that report out would be fine. But again, I think I'll just reiterate that for me, I think that in a scenario where there's an arm's length transaction, there needs to be some mechanism for council to terminate the incentive if council believes that it is not accurate, it is not aligned with the original intention that's approved if this incentive were to be approved. So I'll leave it to you and City Attorney Tam Larison to work that out. I did want to applaud the waiver contract. Was that an outside counsel, or did our city attorney draft that?
That was outside counsel.
I just think that is such a thank you to our applicant for being willing to work with us on that. I think that this is critical to public bodies dealing with public funds to be able to appropriately disclose and have conversations around these important transactions. And as institutional trust has been eroded at every level of every institution, being able to have open and transparent dialogue about incentive requests, I think, is paramount and critical for any transaction going forward. So just huge applause to outside counsel, our Director of Development, Mayor Jadwin, and to you, Mr. Sells, for your work on that. Are there any anticipated TIF dollars that would be requested for this project or any other public funds that would be requested for development purposes?
Yes and no. There's a potential nearby potential development that may use TIF dollars that would benefit this project. Look, they're not asking for them. It would be the other one, but I also don't want you to feel like I'm not disclosing that now. That there could be, but that would be on the other project and not this project.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I noticed in the proposed contract a couple of things. One, will we have the completed exhibits prior to first reading? I noticed there were, I think we have some, maybe we have all of them?
I believe they're all there.
We have all of them now? Okay. And then the agreement referenced the 2000 school compensation agreement. I know that we're not obligated to provide, is it my understanding that we're not obligated to provide notice to the district, but have we done so? Okay.
Even though we're not obligated, we did so.
Okay, and thank you. And would you be able to provide us with a similar Excel sheet or maybe a truncated Excel sheet that shows us the breakdown of the foregone property taxes and who they would be allocated to had they been paid like we've done in the past?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that covers my questions for tonight. Thank you.
Excellent. Any additional questions? All right, then I think we are set for the calendar of first on July 6th and adoption on 7/20. So thank you very much, Mr. Gotke.
Thank you.
Next, we have Public Service,
For your patience.
Senior Director Weibensinger,
Hey,
who's
good
ready
evening.
for the transition.
Yes.
Gotke.
So I'm back again tonight. So I bring before you action item for residential waste collection services here in the city of Gahanna. As you are all aware, we are part of a consortium through SWACO, the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio, Consortium 1. In that consortium are other Central Ohio communities such as Dublin, Bexley, Reynoldsburg, New Albany, Westerville, Belendon Township, Mifflin Township, Plain Township, and Washington Township. The reason we work through this consortium is it has helped us over the last, at least this current contract we're under, with some cost savings as well as administrative burden is reduced. And it really helps with the respondents as well, as opposed to doing 10 separate RFPs like you would see amongst all these organizations. SWACO kind of takes it and makes it a much manageable process for all of us to work together. So we began last fall looking at our waste collection services for 27 through 31. So this is beginning January 1st of 27. And what we really, talking with other communities and understanding how things work in Gahanna, what we ultimately did was we decided that a status quo of what our current collection services are is what we wanted to pursue through 27 through 31. So in February of 26, we went out to bid, or the consortium went out to bid on our behalf, and asked for that status quo bid to maintain the services. And again, the pricing was to secure for 5 years with no cost changes throughout the years. So in 27, we will know, and our residents will know what the cost will be for collection services for 5 years. And that was with no changes. So bids were received in April of this year. We have been analyzing the bids. Bids did come back from 3 respondents. All 3 respondents we did deem as responsible and responsive to the solicitation. Ultimately, looking and evaluating what was in the best interest of the city. Again, we look at the three prongs, which would be lowest price, responsive, and responsible. We did evaluate all the bid documents that were received. And you'll see on my report today, we do have a table that kind of indicates where the pricing came in. The pricing does work out to about a $3.68 increase over what we're currently paying, which, as we anticipated the last 2 years when we talked about utility rates, we knew prices were not going to go down. This still keeps us about 20% below what other entities are seeing for that monthly charge per resident. That does equate to, we always try to put it down to what does this mean to a resident per month, right? So it is around a $44.16 increase beginning in January for the waste collection. We do look at the other pricing options as well, because we do want to make sure we do evaluate as part of the responsibleness customer service aspect for our residents. We did do a review of the previous contract we had, our current contract we had. We did reach out to other communities that use these providers to make sure that we believe we're making a sound decision for the community. Ultimately, the price difference between the first respondent or the lowest respondent and the second respondent works out, again, 64 cents per household per month. So average around 10,380 households for collection. You're looking at around $79,000 a year difference between price one and price two. Times the 5-year agreement, you're looking at just under $400,000 is what we would anticipate the cost variance to be for that. So what we are asking today is to, we respectfully request legislation authorizing the mayor to issue a notice of award and to enter into a contract for waste collection services with Rumpke of Ohio for contract period January of 27 through December of 31. Any questions?
Yes.
So do we know if I was looking through all the attachments and I didn't see this specifically. Do we know if Rumpke also uses the same type of trucks as local waste that do the up and behind dump?
So I believe the trucks are going to be similar. We did look at the compressed natural gas aspects as well. Both have about let's just say a 50% of their fleet meets that compressed natural gas component as well. I don't think you're going to see much of a variance in that.
So my concern is not the gas, it's the trash.
Lifting the trash.
Do you know if?
Lifting?
Yeah.
That I don't know. I can ask. Rumpke's in the back here real quick. Are you familiar with the truck lifting versus?
I can't say for certain what specific truck we'll use on each route. It's probably gonna be a mix depending on the type of street that each truck is going down. But we do targeted messaging as well, because to prevent the trash blowing everywhere, we want all the trash in bags, but vice versa, we want the recycling is. But we take those concerns seriously and we work to rectify those.
And do the ones that are, that tend to spill the most trash on the road, is it typically one employee, just the driver, or is there another employee on the truck?
So those trucks they're called residential front load trucks because they're front loaded.
Could he step up to the microphone? Because our residents are really interested in this conversation, so I think it'd be really important for them to hear.
Jake.
Yeah.
Can you introduce yourself too, since we now have you on the record? Thank you for being here.
My name is Jake Heffron, and I'm the municipal representative for Rumpke here in Central Ohio. So to answer your question about the front load trucks, there's only one employee in those trucks, and typically we run those on the trash or recycling routes, mainly recycling routes because we typically don't see a lot of recycling sitting outside the cart. So we can pick that recycling cart up, with the loader and dump it. Trash trucks and yard waste trucks, we will typically see more than one employee because there's either more trash sitting outside the truck, or to pick up yard waste, you need a helper to accomplish that task.
But the recycling is the one that tends to be the messiest because it's not bagged and it has more lightweight, loose things that are flying every time. There was a long period of time where trash day was known as Big Truck Day at my house. So we've watched these trucks go all around, and to the driver's credit, I don't think that they can a lot of times see that there's trash blowing out into the street. And when they do, I think they do try to stop and pick it up. But in the meantime, like we're just having trash fly on the street. And I saw that in the contract on page 9 and 10, 4.6, the collection contractor shall immediately pick up or sweep any materials that the collection contractor spills during collection. And in the event that they notify a collection contractor that the collection contractor has violated the requirement set forth 3 or more times in 90 days, then we can withhold or invoice $200 per occasion, including the first 3 occasions, from quarterly payment. But it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Because if we report all of these to you and withhold payment, then my guess is that eventually we're going to see our bills going up more because we're not paying you, right?
So
I feel like there's just no solution to this other than we're just going to keep having trash on our streets.
What I'll say to that is that for approximately every 10 drivers, we have a supervisor that is out on the routes with the drivers. You know, during hot summer days, they're giving them waters and Gatorades, but they're also taking in complaints as live we were talking about with the city. We can fully integrate into the CityWorks program. So any complaints that come in, our supervisors can see them live on their laptops in their trucks and rectify those in a very short time manner. So that's how we work with the City of Dublin, City of Westerville, the larger municipalities that we work with here in Franklin County. So we're able to get those complaints, quickly and take care of them quickly as well.
Okay, I think so.
Okay. Ms. Bowers, did you have a question?
Perhaps just one question for the representative from Rumpke while he's still here. So I understand that right now, our current vendor provides customer service support directly. Does Rumpke provide direct customer service to field complaints, or would it be routed through our administrative team?
It's typically up to the resident to decide whether they want to. We have a fully staffed customer service call center in Circleville with 30 employees. So we're ready to field the calls if they decide to call into our customer service line. And that would be on all of our mailers or communication that would go out as well to, call our customer service team. Because that's how that's how we streamline communication quicker between operations and customer service. So.
Thank you. And I did have a question for Senior Director, Deputy Director Weibensinger. Director, one of the concerns that I've heard raised is that there are perhaps some anti-competitive practices going on with an unsustainably low bid, and a concern that this is going to harm the competitive market. Was this taken into consideration by the administration in recommending the vendor?
Yeah, and you can look at this in any type of market, not just in waste collection as well. We don't know what 5 years breeds from now. We can look at the pricing that we've received is still an 18% increase over what we are currently paying. We feel it's still competitive for what we have. We have a different setup than a lot of other entities as well. But what it comes down to is everything that we've evaluated is, it really is about a $400,000 cost difference that the residents would foot over a 5-year contract. But yes, it could be, that could happen in any industry.
I know, I'll just say this now and save time perhaps when this actually comes on for vote, but I maintain, so I recognize that we've had a number of complaints to Councilwoman Padova's points about trash blowing in particularly recycling because it is loose. And there's been a lot of talk about the prior vendor perhaps having better service or that not being seen. But as technology has shifted, I don't think that we are going to realize any kind of reduction in these types of complaints. And so my concern is that our residents are not going to get any better service through this shift. And I recognize and appreciate the aggregate savings that's going to be realized by going with the lowest competitive bidder. But I'll express my concerns that I'm concerned about the anti-competitive practices that may be happening here and potentially concerned about the continued level of quality that we'll probably see, consistent service. Thank you.
Mr. Schnitzer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the presentation. I think most of what the community probably wants to hear is what would change in their day-to-day or week-to-week experience. Right now, is obviously, as you know, I think it's north of 62 is on Monday, south of 62 is on Tuesday.
Think of the big walnut splitting in half roughly.
Okay. Will those days stay the same?
Yeah, as status quo, that is the current bid,
Okay.
yeah.
Containers stay the same, or will there be any change there?
Nope.
Okay,
Stay the
so
same.
residents provide their own for
Yeah,
yard
we have
waste.
the recycling container, city's still responsible for the blue recycling ones.
Okay.
Vendor responsible for the 95 gallon.
And then any change to the bulk side of things? I know sometimes that can be a bit tricky depending on.
No, we did seek clarification, so bulk is still what we consider unlimited, but with reasonableness for things like eviction, set-outs, judicial orders, which is kind of unreasonable to expect a vendor to do at no additional cost.
Still have to call that in, I think.
We should always call in, the bulk, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mrs. Padova.
Sorry, there's one other thing. In 2021, we had a resident reach out about trash pickup on MLK Day. And I see that it's still not listed as a holiday under this new contract. The reason provided at the time was due to SWACO and the landfill not being open on the following Saturday. Has this been brought up with SWACO at all? Or any other municipalities that
Not
are
through this,
part of this?
not through this bid process, no. Is that something we need to address with them for?
So the resident that had reached out to us, I'm looking for what he said exactly, but he said about 20 or so years ago, several members of the community spoke as visitors at City Council to protest the then scheduled garbage and recycling collections on the MLK holiday. They protested the presence of the garbage cans, recycling material, and collection vehicles in our neighborhood streets. If I remember, they cited that the fact that Reverend King was in Memphis, Tennessee just prior to his assassination in order to support a strike by the Memphis sanitation workers called in part in response to the deaths of 2 sanitation workers. And at that point, we were already in a contract, and it was, we would try to address it in the next bid process. And I don't know, so at that point, it was due to SWACO, not Rumpke. I don't know if Rumpke has any, switching to that, if it would change at all, or if that's something that we have to take up with SWACO if this is an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, again, we didn't discuss, I can go back to SWACO. We can discuss with Rumpke what solutions could be around that as well.
Okay, I saw also on page 37, it said exceptions may be able to be accommodated per the contract language if it's different than the normal Rumpke practice. So if we were able to do that, I think that would, I didn't know the kind of history of that, and it has stuck with me since 2021. So I appreciate that history, and I think that's important, especially if there were a lot of community members who had once come to a council meeting to try to change that, that we try to uphold that as much as we can.
Other questions? All right. This would be first on July 6th, second on the 20th, and I believe that's all for this particular item. Thank you, Senior Deputy Director Weibensinger, and thank you, Representative from Rumpke as well. Apologies, but thank you. I forgot your name. Last item from Councilmember Weaver. He is not here, but this is just a reminder of the joint resolution proclamation honoring Kylie Tibbs, who is receiving her second consecutive state wrestling championship title. So Ms. Tibbs will be present to receive that resolution proclamation on the 6th. If there be no other business, we will close this one out. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.